Hi, this is Johannes Krieger with Senshi-Knives. Today I will show you how I restorated my second ever kitchen knife. I built this nearly 1.5 years ago and I was lacking a lot of knowledge back then. The only really nice thing about this knife is the blade profile and most prominently its hamon hardening line. The handle material is rotten and has a layer of metal dust on and in it. The blade is rusty because of the lack of a proper finish, especially one that highlights the hamon nicely, and the bevel grind is bad, which can be prominently observed by the vastly different white edge grinds here. The goal is to correct the bevel grind, refinish the blade with a coffee edge, and give it a nice Japanese style handle, fitting for the hamon. There we go. It's the handle. It's good to know that these handles are well constructed. Even 1.5 years ago. Oh yeah, it's really good on there. Here we have it, the blade without the handle. And so, let's start making the blade over. So, after I got rid of this ugly handle, I start on the belt sander to grind the blade thinner, especially in the center of the blade. I do this by letting the blade touch flat down on the belt, but without much pressure so there is not much material removed. I then proceed with applying light rotating force to the blade on its length axis, to build up the pressure on the cutting edge side of the blade. By doing so, I don't grind down the spine, but the area that is too thick right behind the cutting edge, but without touching the edge itself. After I'm satisfied with the geometry of the blade, I put on the 150 grit belt to sand out all the deep scratches in order to speed up the hand sanding process. With the same belt I also break the edges on the spine to start off the rounding. Now we have arrived at the hand sanding process, and I will cut myself short here to not bore you to death. I simply start out with 180 grit, finish the rounding of the spine and sand out all the scratches, before I move up to 400 grit, which is more than enough for the finish I will put on. But before I will show you the finish, I need to etch in my maker's mark into the blade again, because I ground out the old one. This is pretty straightforward. I use my plotter to cut out my mark from a piece of vinyl, use a transfer sticker to get it on the blade, and then electrochemically etch away the exposed material. The nice thing here is I don't need to worry about the finish in the etched grooves, because the ferric chloride will take care of that. So, speaking of the ferric chloride, here we have arrived. I etched the notoriously cleaned blade for 10 minutes before I take it out to scrub off the oxides with some steel wool. This is to ensure a very uniform and deep etch. After another 20 minutes in the ferric, I neutralize the acid on the blade and clean off the oxides once again. After that, I usually go straight to the kitchen to make the blades some coffee, because the etching makes them very sleepy. Jokes aside, I make a very strong, hot, instant coffee and immerse the blade in there for roughly 10 to 15 hours. And for you, only one cut away. Now you see me rinse off the coffee and show off the final finish of the blade. So, now on to the handle. As you've seen, the old handle is in shambles, so I need a completely new one. For the wood, I decided on some stunning elm burl because it harmonizes very well with the black color of the blade. I strapped the very thin piece to a bigger piece of wood, for it to be stabilized while I drilled a slot for the tang. After I cut the piece to the right length, I move on to shape the handle material into a very near finished state with my belt sander. For this, I use the horizontal configuration because it allows me to evade any nicks in the wood. I usually try to keep the lines in these types of handles pretty straight and converging towards the blade. The glue up with this type of knife is pretty straightforward. I reused the old copper plate in the bolster area and just shined it up a little bit off camera. The only, at least a little bit nerve-wracking part is due to the fact that I did not glove fit the tang to the handle before, so I need to align the blade correctly before the epoxy sets finally in. After very carefully grinding down the copper plate to the dimensions of the handle, I just need to hand sand it to a nice smooth satin finish before I can oil up the wood, sharpen the blade and show you the final result. So, I'm pretty happy how the knife turned out in the end. Although it is noticeable that it is just the 1095 and not the 01 steel I'm currently using. But this being my second ever knife I made back in the days, it holds a lot of sentimental value to me, so I don't think it will get blunt anytime soon. And with that, thank you for watching, and if you have any feedback or questions, please leave them in the comment section down below. And as always, have a nice one. Bye.